How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to SavageSkull. Today, we're going to be starting a brand new series on this channel because today we're going to be looking at Five Nights at Freddy's in Hindsight. I feel like the game means a lot of different things today than it did back in the day and even shortly after the time of its release. I'm going to be looking back at all the games in the franchise, and I hope that I can really explore what the games mean to me now, as well as what each game meant to me back then. And if I do this well, hopefully I can capture the way that you felt about the games all along the way. So without further ado, let's take a look at Five Nights at Freddy's in Hindsight. Before its initial release, I was surprised to find out that Five Nights at Freddy's did in fact have a Kickstarter page. While the page itself didn't look very interesting, the thing that shocked me the most was the fact that Scott wasn't able to raise any money out of his predetermined goal that he had set. And apparently, as far as I can tell, the game was labeled as canceled shortly after it gained zero money. Nonetheless, the game was released and the demo was given to some eager gamers who promised to pay and technically promote the game. And this game blew up. I can't find any of the actual purchase information anywhere on the internet. I assume the only people who would actually know that is maybe Scott and some people at Steam and possibly ClickTeam, but I did find a bunch of sources that say that the sales were in about the 500,000 to 1 million copies range. Again, I can't tell if these are compiled of both the Steam and the mobile sales or just the Steam sales. Either way, the game was released as a huge success on Steam and was later ported to mobile shortly after. Now, the first time I ever encountered this game was on the bus on my way to school one day. I was looking for a spot to sit on the crowded bus, and I remember the only seat being next to this one kid who had an iPad. Of course, he was playing Five Nights at Freddy's. I mean, otherwise I won't be telling you this story. I sat down next to him, and I was too young to have a phone or even an iPad of my own, and I had no other choice than to watch him play the game. I was rather young back then, but I specifically remember being absolutely terrified of the animatronics in this game. I couldn't put my finger on exactly why these characters were so scary to me back then, but if I had to guess, those creatures were definitely nightmare fuel to younger me. The thing that's always been special about the game itself has been the unique gameplay. As I've recently revisited the game during Twitch streams, I've seen and gathered a theory about why it was so gripping and continues to be gripping to this day, and that is the gameplay. The game relies on three simple mechanics: the cameras, the lights, and the audio cues. The cameras, while kind of hard to see, give the player a greater detail of what is going on throughout the pizzeria. Despite the animations within the cameras being overly simple and the camera glitching to show movement, this mechanic is executed near perfectly. Checking on the cameras periodically keeps the animatronic Foxy the Pirate at bay, preventing him from running down the hall and jumpscaring you. The only flaw in this system is as the player gets in tune with the pizzeria as the nights progress, pass, and gameplay hours increase, the cameras are not actually needed to complete the game, but are only used to monitor Foxy in later nights. The lights and doors also have a very simple mechanic that are probably the most useful throughout the game. If you hear an animatronic in your hallway or see one with either the cameras or the lights used by buttons near the doors, you must push the big button labeled door to shut the door and avoid being jump scared. The audio with the doors being shut is absolutely perfect and really makes you think that these doors are super big and bulky and will no doubt hold the animatronics off. Not to mention that the cameras, lights, and doors are all on a power meter, so you have to fend off the animatronics while also doing your best to conserve power. The audio in Five Nights at Freddy's is super helpful and becomes more noticeable to players with more experience. The overall ambience is creepy, and despite it not sounding like a typical pizza restaurant would, it really makes you feel like you're a security guard working at a pizzeria where some strange occurrences are going on. Audio cues in this game can also help aid you in your survival. For instance, if Chica is not seen on the cameras, but an audible pots and pan noise can be heard, the player can assume that she is in the kitchen and not in the attack position. Freddy also has some audio cues. As Freddy laughs, each laugh is respective to his position throughout the pizzeria, and once the player has gotten properly acquainted with the game, he or she is usually pretty safe when it comes to checking the audio cues and keeping Freddy away from the attack position. I feel like this game has stood out and kept itself relevant to this day because of its intriguing gameplay. But one of the main reasons that this game has remained popular to this day are its memorable characters. The fact that there are only 4, maybe 5, may have something to do with its initial popularity. Let's start with the main character, Freddy Fazbear. Freddy's design in particular is really intriguing. The color palette makes him look like a real bear, but the use of the uncanny valley in his design makes him look just humanoid enough that he looks creepy. Bonnie's design utilizes most of Freddy's body due to making it easier to model and just took less time. Bonnie's design also utilizes the uncanny valley a good amount and looks just like a bunny and a creepy robot. Foxy the Pirate's design, I don't really know how I feel about Foxy's design. He looks a lot more worn down than the other animatronics, and while his design also utilizes the Uncanny Valley, I feel like he doesn't really look like a fox. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to move on to Chica. In my opinion, the most terrifying out of all the animatronics in the first game. Her yellow hues, to her disgusting beak, to her eyebrows not making any sense as to why a chicken would even have eyebrows. I've always been scared by Chica, and I would much rather have any other jump scare in this game than be attacked by Chica. There's one more animatronic in this game, and that is Golden Freddy. Golden Freddy is all but an Easter egg at this point. Golden Freddy doesn't even have to appear in the game at all. In fact, during my first full playthrough of the game, I hadn't even encountered him once. It is completely possible to beat the entire game without ever seeing or encountering Golden Freddy. Let's talk about what this game means today. While looking back, it's not as scary or well made as the other games in the series later would be, but it is one of my favorites and still creeps me out to this day. Five Nights at Freddy's has aged in such a way that I can't help think of the now overcrowded story whenever I play this game today. But is this game still scary? I would have to say no. Maybe it's just because I've grown older since first playing it. I can say that the game is not as scary as maybe the first few times I played it. While yes, any horror game is not going to be as scary as the first few times I played it. I still think that the game is very, very creepy, and whenever I play it, I think about all the amazing things that this game has brought us. It is still scary, and I would give it about a 6 out of 10 on the scare factor today. Before I mention the now overcrowded story of the game, I won't go into too much detail on what happened with the story in this video. I'll save that for a video later down the road when we talk about different games. I will say that unlike some later games in this series, the story of this game was uncovered almost completely by the community in a matter of weeks. This was also when Game Theory started making Five Nights at Freddy's videos, and while the first theory video he made doesn't relate to the Five Nights at Freddy's story entirely, it is really, really good. I still like the video, and I think it's entertaining to me to this day. The Living Tombstone also made a Five Nights at Freddy's song, and sometimes I still listen to it today. You know, for the nostalgia, of course. So where does this game go on the tier list? I would like to think that most of the other games in the series are way better than this one, but since it's the first one and it's a classic, I'm still going to be putting it at S tier. Many of you watching this may not agree with this now because all the improvements that were made in later games, but to think about all the things it's brought us and all the things it did well in the game, I'd like to honor this game in such a way. Putting it on S tier just feels right to me. Not to mention, the game is also just really, really good. This game means so much to me now, and it's hard to see or remember what it exactly meant to me back in the day because it's been so long, pun intended. I'm really grateful that this game wasn't canceled and eventually released anyway. And without its sieging popularity, I definitely would not have found it because before this game came out, I had no idea what an indie horror game even was. This game introduced me to so many things, and I'm glad I was able to properly review it and talk about it in hindsight. The idea for this series came from the channel Sagan Hawks. Watching his Five Nights at Freddy's retrospective series inspired this. While these series are familiar, I felt like instead of looking back on the games, he did more of a deep dive into the gameplay than looking back. So I wanted to perfect that and do more of a looking back at each of the games, what they meant then and what they mean now. So be sure to subscribe. If you like this video, I'm doing an entire series on looking back on the entire Five Nights at Freddy's series in hindsight. So if you'd like to see the next one on Five Nights at Freddy's 2, or if there's a certain game in the series you're looking forward to, subscribe now so you don't miss it. If there's anything in any of the future games that you want me to cover, or if there's anything I missed in this one, please let me know and leave it in the comments below. I want to do each and every one of these games justice and make each and every one of these videos properly. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm SavageSkull, and I'll see you on the flip side.